And we are live. Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
I see a few people.
Thank you for joining us.
Indeed, thanks everyone. I see a few people in chat already. Dan Fulton, hello. Matthew Scala, friend of the stream, hello. Mold01. Oh, and SR Baker, you're here as well. That's good to know.
I am also here.
And I am Lee G. I am Leg.
Yes, yes, I am Leg.
So, yes, hello everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Objective-C Retain. We are, like you, sort of permanently in transition on this stream. We started using LiveStep, which is a sort of a distribution of FreeBSD, and I think we're going to talk about more about like that shortly. Then we tried Armbian Linux, and then we went back to LiveStep, and by special request, we're talking about Windows. Specifically Windows 10, this stream, but we haven't sort of got a forever home for for the GNUstep development that we do in this stream, and I thought it'd be interesting to sort of talk about that because we had an interesting discussion last couple of days, probably yesterday, about like distributions of like Linux and releases of BSD or flavors of BSD, whatever the actual terminology is, and the effort that goes into sort of dividing and conquering on all of these platforms, which just kind of made me think that this business of choosing a home for the stream is actually harder than it needs to be for cross-platform tools running on any free operating system. Why is it so hard?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love about these tools, and one of the reasons why I think that GNUstep and free software-based Cocoa is the future in some way, is because what we aim to demonstrate is that with one code base, you can have a native application on 3 platforms, or well, two plus platforms. Sorry. And I think that it's really interesting that we can take software in a framework that we really enjoy working in and have it on Windows, Mac OS, plus all free Unixes. And all free Unix is a very wide range, as we've talked about. And the discussion that we were having was around, I think it started with a friend of mine mentioning somebody had mentioned was asking a question about Ubuntu on Twitter and said, well, after I moved from CentOS to Ubuntu, I haven't done this kind of activity. And he sort of messaged me and asked, why would somebody move from CentOS to Ubuntu? And at the barest of levels, the differences between distributions of GNU and Linux are very superficial. So a lot of people, as a daily user of Fedora or Red Hat, RHEL or CentOS or SUSE, they use the RPM package management, and derivatives of Debian like Ubuntu or Debian or other things use Debian packages, and then there are a few outliers that use their own thing, like Arch or Arch. I don't know how they say it. Yeah. Arch Linux uses its own thing. Gentoo uses its own thing. And all of those platforms offer packages for GNUstep in varying degrees of elderliness. And a lot of the contributors are using FreeBSD. My own preferences will obviously come out in this. I'm one of the kids that Debian raised. I grew up on the Debian mailing lists and stuff, but I actually prefer the BSDs because the BSDs work very hard to provide a cohesive operating system.
Dan Fulton says greetings from Japan. Hi, Dan. Good to have you here.
Hello.
And good to know that we're literally a worldwide phenomenon now.
We are.
From the United Kingdom and Sweden. And Shiskabot asks, "What's the occasion?" Presumably in relation to my my wardrobe. The occasion is, and this is weird, but I've got my kitchen back together for the first time in a few weeks. I had it basically pulled out and rebuilt, which meant I didn't have a washing machine for a number of weeks. Which meant I was just wearing like t-shirts and hoodies because you can like leave them in a stinky pile in the corner, for as long as you like, and nobody can tell the difference. Obviously, in like COVID times, nobody can tell the difference anyway. But I've had a sort of fairly long-running desire to like upgrade my wardrobe away from the old. I realised when I went to FOSDEM last year, I was probably wearing the same clothes I wore at FOSDEM 2007. Except I didn't take my FOSDEM 2007 T-shirt that time,
Right.
And I kind of feel like I actually want to put a bit more effort in. So that's all it is. Anyway, you were talking about sort of being a child of Debian.
Yeah, and so I grew up in Debian, and I Debian is not what it used to be. Not necessarily for better or for worse. The Debian community today is not the Debian community that I grew up in. And so I have nostalgia for Debian, but I do not have a current tie to Debian. And so when I'm looking at, what kinds of things do I need out of an operating system? What kinds of things do I want out of my software? I want a cohesive experience. I want a cohesive operating system, and I get that with a Mac on my Mac. And when I'm using the BSDs, everything, the sort of batteries included, and you don't have to think very much about it. One of the questions that I sort of posed, which may not be stream relevant, or maybe very stream relevant.
Ask it anyway, everyone else can decide. It becomes stream relevant because
there we go.
You've said it on the stream.
So one of the questions that I was asking was in this discussion about, how do I do this thing on CentOS? How do I do things on Ubuntu? And it was all like Mac community people talking about their servers. And I said, why the hell would a Mac user run Linux on their server? Because surely FreeBSD, first of all, FreeBSD is a cohesive thing. It's better documented. It's very well supported for the kinds of things that you need on a server. It's a fantastic server operating system. And it's going to be more familiar to the people who come from macOS, which has large chunks of FreeBSD in it already. And the answer that I got immediately was, well, most people go Windows to Linux to macOS because that's the way that people our age, I think, went. Windows, Linux, Mac OS. But if the software industry, the common the common belief is that the software industry doubles in size every 5 years, that means for the last 3 doublings in the software industry, Mac OS has been sort of the dominant platform for people who are doing web-based software development. And so for as much as maybe 3/4 of the software industry, a lot of those people have never used Linux except for as the deployment environment for the applications that they run locally on their Macintosh. And that, to me, always seemed really weird. And so what I wanted to sort of think about out loud is the way that you get software like GNUstep into your operating system if you are using any one of these things. And GNUstep exists on the OpenBSD ports. It's in FreeBSD ports and packages. It's in Debian. It's in Ubuntu. It's in everything. And so I think part of the problem and the reason why we are sort of bouncing around with platform choice and stuff is because we are spoiled for choice. And every choice has drawbacks and every choice has compromises. But we are spoiled for choice. When your shit runs everywhere, you don't have to pick one place, and that is a feature because cross-platform development is one of the things that we want to talk about and explore. But it's also a bug because it means that we have a different setup every week on the stream.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think like something you said early on was about the sort of the elderliness of the packages, and that has been a big factor. Like when we were on Armbian, which is literally just like Debian with a few default changes, is the ARM64 build of Debian or ARM32 for that matter, with like a few particular tweaks to just to prefer certain things on that platform. The GNUstep packages that you get are incredibly old, and like that's only because nobody has been maintaining them. Like, you know, and that is a feature of the way that Debian works. Is that like Debian is supposed to be a consistent system that is owned by the Debian community, and so you know, you're not just like producing some package from upstream and plopping it into your system. You're like ensuring that it's compatible with everything else. And so if nobody is doing that compatibility testing for GNUstep, then like it's not being adopted from upstream. And you can't just have a CI job in your upstream thing that craps out a D package and an RPM, and then send the D package off to Debian and say, right, that's it. That's the updated packages. Which is so that's kind of disappointing to me, because like my Uber, like my infinite time, Dan Fortune says he's still trying to update. They are still trying to update GNUstep on Pure OS, which is a Debian-based distro. And what I found with like doing it on Ambien was that the like using up-to-date stuff involved using Clang. Using Clang involved building Clang from source, because the Debian version. And so Mov01 says Debian GNUstep team does a great job of keeping the packages up to date. That may well be true. Because I was on ARM, I had to use, and because I was on Ambien, I had to use, I think it was Stretch. Was the release version, so it's quite an old version of Debian, and it uses the GCC Objective-C runtime and some fairly old ports of GNUstep. I think the GCC versus LLVM change is one of the things that causes a lot of the compatibilities as well. Debian is going to prefer the GCC stuff. And the Stretch port, FreeBSD. The Stretch package of Clang is like 3.8. which doesn't support all of the Clang features that are needed for building the libobc2, so that building the GNUstep runtime. So even adopting Clang meant I couldn't like get a modern installation environment. So I had to build Clang, and because I was running on like this little SOC thing, I was like running it on this. Basically, that that massive C++ project just refused to build on this computer. I'm like on this sort of question of the two compilers. Like what I want out of GNUstep is a home for software that is written for the Mac. For either where the moment that Apple decided they're going to turn off Objective-C support for external users, or for the people who are frustrated with not necessarily the technology choices, but maybe the technology choices or the business choices, or just like anything about Apple that makes them want to look for an alternative. But and Apple is giving us new reasons every day. Well, so like the irony is that I have never myself put an app onto the iOS App Store, because when they announced it, so I went to WWDC in 2008, which was the first post iPhone one, but that was the Sweet Solution era, so that was web app iPhone, and I went in 2009, which was the first App Store one and the first one that sold out. And I worked for a big enough Apple customer that I got a deal through my account manager, which I actually did every time I went up until 2009, when they finally went, no, screw you. It turns out we can actually sell these tickets. There are idiots out there who will pay to come to our PowerPoint presentations about our new APIs. So I've never put an app on the store, and the reason was the sort of business practices. I didn't particularly care 30%, and it was a lot. Like Apple always compare the App Store to bricks and mortar, but like that's a spurious or specious comparison, because like in 2008 we were all doing digital downloads over the web, but we were all using I can't remember the name. Was it like Kagi or something? The online payment provider we were using.
KAGI.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah,
and it was, and they were charging 8%, which is basically because they were using Visa, and Visa were charging like 6%, so they were adding a markup on top of that, and not much of a markup. But we had to do our own marketing. We had to do our own finding customers and and all of that good stuff, and we were paying not very much in return for like not much service. What Apple said was, we'll do all that for you and we'll charge you 30%. I wouldn't have a problem with that, except that they weren't doing that. Not only that, but they were like actively hostile to any app that competes with anything that they want to produce themselves, with a bunch of like business models. I don't think it's my platform's business to tell me how to run my business. Like they are now rejecting apps for like using high price points. That's not their concern. Like because they make more money out of me using high price points if I can find the customers. But it's on me to find the customers because they don't do it. This is a rant, and I'm going to like cut the rant short. My point is like for the entire time that I have been using Cocoa, because like you, I came from Linux to Mac OS 10, or actually from Linux to Nextstep, and then Nextstep to Mac OS 10. But that's a weird quirk of the experience of computers I got to use.
If we're being technical, I went from IRIX to Mac OS 10.
Nice, yeah. So anyway, like going from like sort of generic Unix to Mac OS 10. The reason I did that back in like 2002, probably 2004 was when I bought my first Mac, but I've been using them for a bit since then. Is because it was like using a Linux, except if you close the lid and then open the lid again, the computer turned back on. Or like if you plugged a display in, then you got to see pictures on that other display. That was what a Mac got you, and even like all of Apple's marketing was about that at the time. They have moved on from that, and like understandably so. They make enough money that they don't need to.
Sometimes when you close the lid, now your computer crashes.
Oh yeah, well, so like
so they fixed that problem.
No, absolutely. But like I have always kind of been like I love this technology. I'm not so like enthusiastic about the sort of business practices. So what that has like meant that I have wanted, and I've finally realised that if I want it, I have to do something about it myself, is that I want to be able to like take my code that I've written for the Mac over the last like 2 decades and still run it, even if I don't want to run it on something I bought from Apple anymore. So that makes me want the modern compiler with the modern runtime and the modern features, because that improves the collection of compatibility. Now, the opposite approach is something that GNUstep also does very well, and is also about improving compatibility, is that they have typically like maintained support for fairly old compilers. GCC 295, I think, is the oldest that they would support, and a wide range of Unix operating systems, which is vaguely relevant, and definitely relevant to this discussion about the Forever Home, but is less and less relevant as like nobody cares about any proprietary Unix anymore apart from Mac OS 10. So Solaris and AIX and presumably HPUX all still exist, but I don't think that for the most part people are doing anything apart from like running them in their server rooms because they accidentally locked themselves in sometime in the past.
Yeah, this is a common thing. I mean, I ended up on we've talked. I'm not sure if we talked on this stream actually about sort of the death of workstations. For me, it was all, and Graham wrote an article about this in Deprogram It Programmatica ipsum. I can never say it.
Yeah, maybe it was a bad URL in retrospect.
So you should please paste a link to the workstation post, which I think came from a discussion that we had on our other stream, where I always wanted a workstation, and back then having a workstation meant you get ECC RAM, you get higher quality components. Typically, you would have SCSI and bus instead of IDE, which back then was faster and more reliable. You would get, in some of the higher end workstations, you could have hot swappable RAM, multiple power supplies, and things like that. And I didn't really need a lot of that stuff. But I certainly went from running home-built computers with Debian, and then I decided, well, wait a minute, I kind of like workstation class hardware and it looks cool. And so I got some SGIO2s, and I used that for a while. And one of the beautiful things about free software and Unix being sort of, standard, is that, I ran IRIX as my daily driver. I ran an O2 on IRIX 6.5 point something as my daily driver for a couple of years. In fact, I started my when I started doing Ruby on Rails stuff in 2004, like a couple of weeks after it came out, I was doing all of that on an SGIO2, and on IRC, people were telling me, "Oh, well, I didn't know that Ruby ran. I didn't know you could compile and run Ruby on IRIX." And it's possible that I was the only person in the world doing that. And now there is only one commercial Unix that anyone actually chooses to use themselves, and it's Mac OS, and it's less Unix every year, and it's amusingly, I think the point at which it started being less Unixy every year was the turning point was when they got their Unix certification, I think, which was Snow Leopard.
Leopard was the first time they had.
Was it Leopard?
Yeah, but basically
okay.
Then, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that is I think a really for me, I like Unix. I have a complicated relationship with Unix, as everyone who uses it does, and these things are really nice and important to me. And I would like to be able to take that software with me as well. I also don't like the App Store. I have put apps on the App Store, and I probably will continue to, but I don't like it. And it's not a situation that I'm enjoying. Currently, I think, like right now, actually, I don't remember the time zone offset, but there are state officials in Arizona voting on whether they should prevent Apple from requiring you to use the App Store if your business is based in Arizona.
Nice.
And so tomorrow, as early as tomorrow, we will know if people who relocate their businesses to Arizona can sidestep the App Store purchasing rules. And actually, Basecamp, DHH of Rails fame and Basecamp fame, has been very vocal in this argument, and said he's got
his app Hey Email, which is
and he said on Twitter just a couple of hours ago that they are ready to launch their new version for Arizona customers, and he even said we would be willing. Right, and he said we would be willing to relocate our business to Arizona if they do this. Nice. Because that would mean that they get to sidestep this stuff. And this is an ongoing battle, but I think it's a battle we shouldn't have to fight. And if we can bring GNUstep up to a certain level, I think it's a battle we don't have to fight anymore.
Yeah, so that is the reason that I would prefer, like, to be using modern compiler, like, modern version, like, whatever the latest versions of libraries are, just hook me up to master or main, on Git, and I'll use whatever is latest, because then I can port more software, and I can get more. A bigger. It's not about. So there's a bunch of things that need to happen, right? There's got to be the developer ecosystem around GNUstep, so that people realise it's a thing and that they can port their apps. And I'm hoping that that is what that's what this stream contributes to, is an understanding of the availability and accessibility of these tools. It also needs, to some extent, a user ecosystem, because it needs people who want to use those applications. Now, a bunch of people who are using GNUstep out there will be doing line of business, like internal apps. Like, at some point in the past, they had macOS 10 or they had Next, and something went away. Like maybe they had server-based applications on Xserves, and Apple no longer sell that Xserve anymore, or they had. Or maybe they're just hedging. Maybe they just want to know that their business will continue if if Apple alters the deal. And those people, don't care about like a user base per se. They care about, can my IT department configure these computers and run this software on them, and that's fine. They're absolutely great. But for the kind of stuff that we are interested in, we've been working on, it's mostly sort of desktop applications, mostly Cocoa apps. And we've got to have people who want to run those apps and understand why. Understand like why they should want to pick a GNUstep suite of applications. Being careful not to describe GNUstep as a development environment, because it's not, as a desktop environment, because it's not. It's a developer tool set. But if you build something like Etoile or LiveStep on top of this, then why should I use that rather than using KDE, which also has a mature and capable suite of apps that are also fairly well integrated, or instead of GNOME, or instead of like the stuff that's built into a Mac or whatever.
Right, and for me, in my daily computering, I use I make heavy use of a few very small apps that I need very little out of. I make heavy use of my calendar, of my address book, of Emacs, although I only use Emacs for text editing. I don't read my email in it anymore, things like that. And I want a mail client. And if then for reasons, obviously, I need a web browser. And at such point as we can have on GNUstep all of those things, it makes sense for a certain class of user to start using GNUstep-based system. And the web browser really is the missing link, as it always is. But that work can be done. We can embed, the work can be done to embed the Mozilla renderer into a GNUstep window. The work can be done to embed WebKit or Ceph or any of those other things. The GNUstep already has a fantastic mail client called Gnumail, which is really great. It supports IMAP idle. It's basically a GUI front end to a library called Pantomime. Pantomime is an IMAP. I think it's the most robust IMAP implementation library, and it's in Objective-C. And it's a terrific library, and Gnumail app winds up being a terrific mail client when using it. So we already have RSS readers. I'm looking in my dock to see what I use every day. And the things that I use every day, the only things that I use every day that aren't easily done on GNUstep are the Photos app, because we don't have a good Photos app on GNUstep yet. And a web browser, we need a more modern implementation of the web browser. And then the only thing that I live in OmniFocus for reasons, but I would be very, very happy and have plans to replace OmniFocus with a Cocoa application on GNUstep, so that I don't need to rely on OmniFocus anymore. And at that point, I can start using something different. And I might not use something different. I ordered my wife an M1 MacBook Air today, and it makes things easier if we use the same platform. I am currently planning on ordering the M1 Badass system whenever they announce it, to replace my aging MacBook Pro. But it's not about what I'm using today. It's about the future. I believe, Graham, I don't remember where it came from, and maybe you don't care to say, but Graham relayed a message to me from somebody that he does some activism with, that it is not the activist's job to tell people what they ought to be doing. The activist's job is to show people what they can be doing. And that, I think that working on GNUstep and making free software Cocoa available to people is definitely activism work. And I think that all we have to do is show people that it's possible.
So that was from a podcast called General Intellect Unit, which is sort of vaguely technology and creative people on the left wing in America. But although they were interviewing Common Knowledge, who are technology cooperative based in the UK.
So it was Common Knowledge. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And that
I can't remember whether it was Common Knowledge or whether it was the hosts. it was that episode.
Okay. So, and I think that that's really important. I think that I would personally like to be able to have my cake and eat it too. I would like to build an iOS app using UIKit because I think UIKit is good. I know that UIKit was good. I am less sure of it every year when they announce new updates. But if we have an implementation of UIKit that is that compiles with GNUstep, then we can have UIKit apps on Android as well, and with one code base. And to me, that is a much better solution than using things like React Native and the other cross-platform things. Even the good cross-platform things, like for me, I'm a fan of Xamarin. Xamarin's cross-platform stuff, and I've used it successfully on at least 2 projects. And I know Graham also has opinions on Xamarin. And
formed from experience, let's say.
Right.
Because that's not always clear with programmers.
Oh yeah. I guess we should specify. And I think that Xamarin is very good, but as soon as you're doing anything even remotely complicated in Xamarin, you wind up having to do a native implementation on both platforms, and that it's up to you to decide if that's what you want to do for your particular project. Using React Native is always a bad choice, but using something like Xamarin Forms or something that is a little bit, more sensible. I could just keep saying in my opinion, but that's kind of implied, I think. But I think that if we just take a good platform and make it cross-platform, then we wind up being in a really good place. And the reason I think that we're better off to focus on GNUstep, there are two main reasons. One is because I prefer Cocoa as an application development platform. The way that it works speaks to my brain more than the way that native Android development speaks to my brain. And the other reason is, although this is also getting less true, when you have an iPhone app that doesn't behave like an iPhone app should, people notice. It's sort of in 1,000 paper cuts territory. When you have an Android app that doesn't behave the way an Android app should, Android users are less likely to notice those kinds of things, and there are also way more of them.
Yeah, because the shit that was bundled by like Samsung or Sony or Xiaomi or Huawei or whoever also doesn't work like an Android app. So they're sort of indoctrinated into not having expectations.
Well, they've inherited the Linux distribution problem, right? On the face of it, you think you're running Android, just like when you run Debian, when you have CentOS and you switch to Ubuntu, you think you're just getting a slightly different flavor of Linux. But I would argue that when you switch from CentOS to Ubuntu, you should have also considered every other option that's available to you, including Windows Server, including FreeBSD and OpenBSD. You should consider all of those things. And to me, CentOS and Ubuntu are close enough in all of the wrong ways and far enough away from each other in all of the wrong ways. And so that is a sidestep, but it's a sidestep that will bite you in the ass potentially. And I think that and in Android land, they've definitely inherited this problem, where if you get a Samsung Android phone, it looks and behaves very differently than a Sony Android phone. And they, although I will say, and this is not the Sony Android installation is closest to bone stock Android open source project, but also you can't get Sony phones in North America, so it doesn't matter to the largest part of the market, I guess. So I think that it's really important to have these things because we want to show people, this code that you have, you've invested time, you've invested money, you've invested your energy into these applications, and the platform, even though Apple is telling you that the platform is changing and moving, it's not necessary that you move and change with the platform unless you specifically require the things that the new platforms offer. If you are writing an AR kit, if you're doing anything in augmented reality, you should definitely go and use ARKit, and you should probably use Swift for that because ARKit is starting to get some stuff that's Swift based. But if your application doesn't require anything from ARKit, you are not necessarily required to upgrade to the latest stuff. One final point on that: I have 2 open source projects that I hack on. Anti-RSI, which we've seen on this stream, and also CocoFibs, which is an online backgammon player. And one of the most common things that I see as soon as somebody sends me a pull request or tries to build the software, they say, "Oh, I've updated all the minimum targets to the latest version of Mac OS 10." And I don't want that. I like that the minimum version of Mac OS 10 for CocoFibs is 10.6. I like that.
And that is part of the sort of Apple, like, whether it's, I mean, it certainly is Apple directed. Whether it's Apple driven or not is a question.
Right.
But the sort of community mindset of, like, always latest greatest, always drop, like, old versions as soon as you can, because that way you get newer features. Which isn't true. Like, you get newer features by doing the work, by coding those features up. It doesn't magically happen if you drop 10.9, you don't automatically get 10.10 latest and greatest. Anyway, I want to kind of bring this to some form of conclusion by first giving my views on what the Forever Home will look like, and then asking for yours. Bear in mind that I'm probably going to be the one who gets the computer and installs it. So, like, this is only democratic to some extent. Right. But, like, so given infinite time, which neither of us have, like, we literally spend about 2 hours and 8 minutes every week on a 2-hour stream. Right. But infinite time, my ideal thing would just be to go, screw you all, everyone, we're going Debian herd all the way. And GNUstep runs really well on Debian GNU herd. And, like, people don't know that. Like, people don't know that herd is actually a usable desktop operating system, and it'd be cool to do that. But the amount of compatibility of other packages is limited. There's no Clang support, for example, so we would be going back to old version of Objective-C and old version of GCC, not old version of GCC, but old GCC support for Objective-C, and so we would have, we would lose a bunch of modern Objective-C features, and that would put people off because they wouldn't be able to port their code. So that is out for me, because it would be too much effort to make it a, like, modernly usable system. I hadn't realised until Mov01 said it that the Debian GNUstep packages are actually kept up to date. It's probably just that I've been using a stable release of Debian. Yep. And that I need to use a less stable release of Debian. So that's so by which I now mean Debian GNU/Linux, and that is definitely an option I would consider. Of the BSDs, I think FreeBSD would be my choice. They both work. But sorry, I say both. That immediately offends both of the people who use NetBSD. When I say on
12 different platforms, though.
yeah, I mean, on all of their toasters. Right. When I say both of the BSDs, what I mean is FreeBSD and OpenBSD, because those are the two that I have experience with as as like desktop operating systems, and indeed OpenBSD is a server operating system as well. OpenBSD is like a little harder to get to work on a desktop system in my experience. I will accept that other people have other experiences. Like I think one of the things that there have been, to my knowledge, 2 attempts to do a GNUstep based distribution on a FreeBSD, and there have been 3 attempts in general to do Mac-like things on FreeBSD. So the 2 that are GNUstep-ish are Midnight BSD, which forked FreeBSD a long time ago, and then got caught up in making sure that all the port tree was compatible with with their fork, and adopting security backports and things, and so unfortunately never got particularly far down the route of actually building a GNUstep desktop experience on top of FreeBSD, which was their original goal. I don't know whether it still is Lucas's goal or not. The other is LiveStep, which we've seen on this stream before, which took a live CD tool, FuryBSD, and just stuck a bunch of GNUstep packages on top. And that worked really well. Unfortunately, based on 12.1 release, which is end of life. And I think the developer, which is Pro Bono, has already moved on to Hello System, which is a Mac lookalike KDE on top of FreeBSD. So that, whether or not there's any ongoing momentum in that, I don't know. The third is NextBSD, which was from Jordan Hubbard, who was the he was definitely the director of the Unix engineering team at Apple at some point in the past. He may have been higher than that even. He may have been. He was definitely never the senior vice president of software, but he may have been somewhere between the 2 roles that I've just listed.
He was also the leader of the FreeBSD project at that time, I think.
Yeah. And so like they sort of announced a thing where it's like, this is FreeBSD, but we're like putting launchd in, and we're putting libdispatch in, and we're putting some other like open source bits from Apple in, and I don't remember seeing a release of that even ever. So there we go. Like my preferences would be Debian or FreeBSD.
Okay. If to go back to where you started, assuming infinite time, I would also start from herd and work upward, and that would require infinite time because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on herd. But that would also be where I would start. I probably wouldn't go Debian based, even though it hurts me a little to say that. I'm really interested in the Geeks, GUIX, the GNU system, because one of the things that operating systems are doing now that I think is an improvement, and it's potentially one of the only improvements that I will accept, is immutable systems and sandboxing of applications, and Geeks does this really well and has a scheme-based init system and some really cool stuff there. So I would, in infinite time, I would use a GNU herd-backed Geeks. And this is largely because I just believe in the GNU project. I identify with the needs and that the GNU project has and problems it wants to solve.
This is why we both have Stallman hair.
Right. And this is also why or another reason why is because I prefer copyleft licenses. I think it's only a matter of time. Apple de facto owns LLVM now, and I think it's only a matter of time before they just stop releasing updates. And the LLVM license allows that. I want the latest and greatest because I think it's the best for the users of whatever we build, but I also think that that's also an eventual dead end road as well. So pragmatically, I am a fan of going in one of two directions, one being FreeBSD, and FreeBSD is very well documented, but it is a bit kitchen sinky. I configured a firewall, like a WireGuard installation to connect my houses together, and I had to choose, in order to do it on FreeBSD, I had to choose from one of 4 packet filtering options, which are all available in kernel by default. And then I had to install the tools and stuff. And I got about 4 hours into that before I said, fuck it, I'm installing OpenBSD. I put OpenBSD on the machine, and it was up and running with all in-kernel support, no external packages, in about an hour. It would take about an hour and a half here because the internet is so much slower. Most of, like, a lot of the time is just downloading the operating system. OpenBSD has a few other cool features. It has a really, really, really great audio system, but it is OpenBSD audio is not compatible with other BSD audio systems, as I understand it. So we would, if we were going to do for instance, a core audio implementation on OpenBSD, it would not necessarily work on FreeBSD, but it would be really good on OpenBSD. But OpenBSD does require. It's also very well documented, but you have to know where to look. So we would then be in the distribution game, I think. On FreeBSD, I think FreeBSD is the pragmatic choice because I think we can do this on FreeBSD with all of the existing ports and packages, and just adding, and all of our changes would be additive only. I think we could do it on FreeBSD. We could get the ideal world in FreeBSD in an additive way. And I think that it makes it the pragmatic choice. Okay. Debian would also be a reasonable and pragmatic choice, but we would be fighting against compiler versions. We would be backporting stuff between releases and things like that. This is all stuff I'm very comfortable with. But despite being very comfortable with it, it's not where I want to spend my time.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think that a FreeBSD based solution is the pragmatic choice. But I'm open to anything, and also the thing that we keep coming back to is that this is cross-platform stuff. Everything we do should be usable on multiple platforms anyways.
Indeed.
And so I think that sort of summarizes my feelings on it, which may be different next week.
Yeah. So the two things you brought up that I hadn't thought of. One is, Geeks is a very good point. I don't know whether there are Geeks packages or rather Geeks definitions for the GNUstep libraries, but if they weren't, that would be a useful contribution. I really like Geeks SD. I really like the way that they think about system. And the other on OpenBSD particularly is mprotect, and is the entire coming from a Mac. One of the things that people will know is that it's got a fairly advanced mandatory access control system that's used to to wrap the apps in the App Store, to provide plugin architecture where plugins can only do pure computations, or where a plugin can connect to the network and the host application can't, and to do this sort of separation of concerns, and that is possible in a very different way in OpenBSD. But again, as you said, with the audio system, would be then OpenBSD only. That said, please.
The audio system on OpenBSD is so good, it might actually be worth it on its own if we wanted to explore core audio. For those of you in the audience that want to Google these things, Pledge is the system in OpenBSD that lets you control which system calls an application has access to, and this would allow us
yes, I didn't
basically
mean mprotect is part of the security system. It's not the important part.
So Pledge is the Googleable term, and OpenBSD developers have gone through the entire ports tree, including massive applications like Firefox and Chromium, and have made those Pledge compliant. And if we wanted to make a Mac-like experience that says, like all these things that came up in Catalina, where you have to say, hey, do you want to let this application access your downloads folder? I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do, especially where I'm running applications that I just don't trust where they came from. And I'm very picky about what I let touch my entire system and what I let touch my home dir. And Pledge already has that functionality. So Pledge allows you to say, this program is allowed to open files, but only under this path, and things like that. So it is the Pledge system would be the place to implement the sandboxing and stuff that came in Catalina, which I think is an improvement. It is annoying as fuck, but as a user, especially after an upgrade, but it is an improvement, I think, over previous systems.
Sure. Okay. So. We haven't really resolved the question, and having discussed which of various free platforms we'd like to be using, obviously the thing to do now is to switch to Windows. So
Yes.
For those who are new to the stream, I see a few new handles in the chat, so I'm just going to do a bit of an intro. We are Graham and Stephen. We run this stream, Objective-C Retain, which is all about building Objective-C software using cross-platform tools. We are, what is this, episode 4, I think. So still sort of bedding in and building momentum. And we've taken a fairly broad look at a couple of different operating systems. And last week, I happened to mention that, because of the way that we're set up, we're in different countries and trying to do this over the internet, the easiest thing to do would be to do GNUstep on Windows. So having discussed that with people in the chat, we decided that is something that people would be interested to see. So what I'm going to do now is switch to Heads and Computer, where you get to see my Windows desktop. I'm going to do a nice transition where I move my camera over to on top of that computer. Now, having said that would be the easiest thing to do, turns out it's really hard to do. So, I searched, and part of this is like my interneting strategy, which got in the way of it. I searched for GNUstep on Windows, like how to build GNUstep on Windows. I kept finding this link to the GNUstep wiki and the packages for GNUstep on Windows, which use the MinGW. They use a MinGW system, which, for those who haven't heard it, is minimalist GNU for Windows. It's essentially a way to get things like GCC and Make running in a bash, in a sort of POSIX shell-like thing in a Windows environment. Those packages are from 2016. So definitely are not the most up to date. And when I tried them out, I installed them on here and it didn't work. So then I asked on the GNUstep IRC channel, and was told, the packages are out of date. Sorry, but you have to build. And it happens that in the GNUstep Facebook group, which I have open over here, Ricardo Matola, who's one of the maintainers, posted this post saying, I've got MinGW64 working with GUI mode smoothly. So obviously there is work being done on the Windows port. So I just said, as you can see down here, are there build instructions for Windows anywhere? And he said yes. Links to from the homepage of the wiki is this page, which tells you to use MSys2, which is sort of a like an update of MinGW, but it's like a different package, and it's got, going back to this idea that like everybody on Linux either just changes the desktop image and calls their distribution new, or builds a whole new packaging system for their distribution. This one uses Pacman, which is from Arch Linux, I think. So I have got as far in these instructions as here, and then I wanted to talk to Stephen about which of these two branches we take. If we do GCC, it looks like I get a bunch of packages from Pacman and then clone GNUstep and start building it. If I use Clang, then it looks like I have to get Chocolatey, which is a Windows third-party software package manager thing, and then paste some commands out of their CI script, and then I can start building.
Just stop scrolling for a second. Let me see that chocolatey. I can scroll myself.
You can.
Look at that. All right. So I do have a lot of experience with chocolatey because I moved at a previous job. I moved a bunch of people over to using chocolatey to install our dependencies, and this looks very straightforward. So I would recommend, because we want the latest and greatest stuff, I would recommend that doing chocolatey and then doing these running these commands that are labeled by script. So we just have to choco install Ninja and LLVM, and then we just have to do some building. And if you're running this on your Nook, which is pretty fast, that building should not take terribly long, I don't think.
Okay, well, I'm happy to go that route. One thing I do notice, I'm going to take control of the mouse just to
go ahead.
Highlight the thing that I want to highlight. Here, it takes a bunch of stuff from Visual Studio. I don't have Visual Studio. I'm hoping that we don't actually need that.
So that is the there is a chocolatey package which I can look for while we're waiting on this.
Okay.
There's a chocolatey package that is just the you may remember the msvc.dll or whatever, right? Like that's the base sort of. Yeah, it's just the basic runtime library, and you can install that with chocolatey.
Okay.
I do not, and so I assume. What I'm hoping is that after you run install chocolatey and then run install Ninja and LLVM, I'm assuming that LLVM will depend on that and will install it for you via chocolatey.
Okay.
That's my assumption, but I do know that you don't have to install all of Visual Studio. You just need to install the runtime shit.
So this is the package. This is for people who are coming from the Mac. This is the install the Xcode command line tools before you can actually use your Mac.
Yes. Basically, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Amusingly, yesterday I was recommending a new free software application to my wife for window management on her Mac, and I told her, okay, see if there's an install from App Store button, because you should always install from App Store. I always install from Homebrew, even if it's available on App Store.
Yeah.
Because I want to limit my IT support stuff. And she said, oh, this is how I install VLC. Which I forgot that she had been using VLC, and it's a program that she uses all the fucking time. So she and then she proceeded to download the application archive, load the DMG, and drag it. And she pointed out specifically, I love that installing a program is just drag and drop to the applications folder.
Right, which is the thing that we were all told that real humans don't know how to do.
Right, and every application, and I told her, I made that argument to her while she was doing it. She dragged and dropped it, and I said, yeah, but if they don't give you a link to the applications folder in the thing, then it's a little bit more difficult than that, so this is not a nice way to do it. And she said, no, they all do. Everything that I've ever installed always makes it this easy.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is the convention over configuration thing winning. So that convention wins, and my wife approves.
Nice. So I'm going to try and follow these instructions while you look up the thing that you were going to look up, because this first bit says run this script. I don't have that script, and it hasn't told me how to get that script, but I'm guessing this looks like the name of one of the GitHub repositories that GNUstep has. So I'm going to guess that I can clone a thing that is called that. I can clone a thing that is called that. You have muted.
I was wrong about LLVM depending on the Visual Studio stuff, so I'm going to find the name of that package.
Okay. Ooh. There isn't a script called the thing that they say the script is called.
Okay.
I will guess I want msys_nt because
that looks close enough, but it's not the 64-bit. I suspect perhaps that that the MSys2 64-bit script is either an old name or in a different branch, and we may want that branch.
Yeah, let's have a look. Oh. Nope, there's only one branch.
Okay. Then let's use the MSysNT. That should work.
Let's see what it does. Because if it uses Pac-Man, then we know which it does. And it's using MinGW Win64 x86 64. So this is using the correct architecture.
Okay, perfect.
So that should be the right one. This is a wiki, so I can actually correct that live on stream. Oh, this is why I wish we had a command key.
Yes.
Yes, proceed. You don't actually need subversion. So this is the problem I had with the Debian build script which is called GNUstep Startup, is that it still expects all of the source to be in the subversion repo. Oh no, you have to log in to edit pages. I'm not going to update the documentation.
I may have been wrong about not needing all of Visual Studio, but you can install it with Chocolatey. So
okay.
So you can also uninstall it easily as well. And it looks like it's Visual Studio 2017 Enterprise. So I'm going to paste you in our super secret private chat the link
I go to open. You can't do that because I would need to open the super secret private chat on the machine that we're streaming from.
Okay, never mind. It is literally just called Visual Studio 2017 Enterprise. You pass that to Choco install.
Stick the command in the stream chat, and then everybody else gets.
There we go. There we go. I can definitely do that. So there is. That's the command, and that gets you. Chocolatey is fantastic. If you are stuck using Windows. Although, and I will also say, Windows 10 is actually not bad.
It's a nice system. I mean, my only problem is that I have never learnt enough Windows to fully trust it. But it's definitely my understanding, not it, that is flaky. Wow.
Yeah, I used when I worked at uBlocks, everything was Windows based. And I really was not feeling good about that. But after I installed Chocolatey and then started converting all of the build scripts, which were random batch files and bash scripts that were having to be kept in sync, I converted everything over to MS Build. And using Windows with Chocolatey and MS Build was actually a reasonable development experience. And it was because we were doing embedded hardware development where the SDKs were only available for Windows. It was entirely reasonable.
Mob01 says there is a modern install script that uses GitHub. It'd be nice to just paste that into the tools startup repo, which is over here. I think.
One of the things with an app with something that's this old and people do a lot of drive-by commits and stuff, it's very easy for the documentation to get out of date. Wow, look at that! M4 is 36% of this archive of this repo.
Wow.
I like M4. I do not like M4 36%.
So, yeah, this script is the one that, like, the documentation on the wiki tells you to do. Now, I probably have an ancient account on the GNUstep wiki and could log in or like do the password recovery step, then log in, and then update a lot of this stuff. I am told that they are trying to replace the wiki with a different system and with some different hosting. I don't know the details of that. Greg Casamento told me it.
There we go.
You
You're back.
disappeared and you came back, but you are back.
You did too.
Oh, nice. Okay, so
right.
Anyway, like Greg Casamento said that they are moving to a different technology. So I don't know whether that means that changes to the wiki would be lost or not, and I would wait to hear that before I actually tried to make any of these edits. But there is a lot of outdated information on the wiki, unfortunately. And there's a load of decade-old information on the wiki, on like Nicola Perot's tutorials sites, on all sorts of places that is still relevant because a lot of this software is very stable.
Yeah, it's and so I think it what it requires is, for a sufficiently motivated individual or pair of individuals to go through and do a wiki cleanup. But of course, that should wait until they decide what they're doing and where it's going to live.
Yeah, no, I prefer particularly for documentation changes, but actually for all changes, I prefer the sort of drive-by approach. I've got like one commit in Herd, one commit in Freebsd, and probably like, I don't know, 8 or 9 commits in GNUstep, one commit in Clang. And that just really suits my sort of, here's my itch, I'm going to scratch it, I'm going to solve it. What the sort of compact that you need, unfortunately, is that you need a it takes a lot of time commitment from the maintainers to like look at this massive breadth of people doing these tiny commits, going to do I want to absorb this into my project? Do I want to be on the hook for this randoms 3-line change, or this randoms 20 file half a megabyte diff that they've just dropped on me, and my experience over history. I'm not saying this is the way it is now, but I'm saying that I have been working with GNUstep on and off since at least 2003, and my experience has been that they work a lot better with the sort of core maintainers team taking responsibility for like the Windows backend, for the Cairo backend, for Base, for Make, for Project Center, and that it's easy for sort of small, hey, I'd like this thing to happen to go missing. But as I say, I think I've got an account on the wiki, so I can just edit those pages without having to bug someone else to do it for me.
Right.
Why don't I look in my password manager and see whether I have a password for the wiki?
I'm going to be. I'm looking at the the time that it takes to download these packages, and really appreciating gigabit internet that I have up north.
Yeah, sucks to be me, and sucks to be also streaming a 1080p stream. I hope it's 1080p. It was last week. This is not being done over HTTPS.
It must be, because your password is coming through as dots.
It's Hunter 2.
That's the most secure password.
Yep.
No, I think it's horse car battery staple is the most secure password.
Okay, so now, actually, I'm going to do what I should have done before I open that in a new tab. I still can't edit it. This page has been locked to prevent editing.
Oh, okay then.
So presumably they have given up on the wiki and have decided to ossify it while they do so.
Well, that's responsible.
Why don't I at least add something to the discussion page? No, the discussion page has been protected. Right, yeah. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. And guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I did try to update the GNUstep documentation live on the stream, and I apologise for not being able to do so. Oh, come on. I don't know whether Pac-Man has this flag, but apt certainly does. -y is a useful flag in installer scripts.
All right. The installation is taking long enough that we could start a third stream on GNU Herd.
Yes, I just don't have enough space on this Nook's hard disk to stick yet another VM on it. So I need another computer for that. Okay. Herd does run pretty well natively on various sort of Intel systems. It's obviously a 32-bit kernel, but whenever whenever the team do their annual FOSDEM, no, we're still alive, please stop ignoring us talk. Right. They are always doing it on one of those and I always forget the model number. What's the ThinkPad one that you can do core boot on?
Oh, well, there are 3 or 4 of them, but it's probably an X200 series.
That sounds
or
about right.
T400, yeah.
Probably the X200, but yeah, like that. That you can just run Herd on with networking and sound and X and everything.
Yeah, Herd runs really well on the limited. If you get the right collection of hardware, it works really well. It's by design is a very resilient operating system.
Yeah, the challenge is when they the way they got device drivers was to just port the code from Linux device driver management into into a user space process, and the time at which they did that was Linux 2.2. So it's got E2FS. It doesn't have E3 or E4, which means that every time it crashes, you basically lose your whole file system. You have to start again, and the device drivers are just out of date, and it's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame because there are a few things that prevent people from sort of taking it forward. I think the version of Mach that they use is 32-bit, and moving it to 64-bit would be really problematic.
Yeah, I think the problem,
and a few things like that.
So the problem comes with porting MIG, which is the or rather porting the RPC layer, because ideally what you want is for you probably want a 64-bit kernel but still running a 32-bit userland until you've 64-bitted all your userland, but everything is going to disagree on how long a pointer is. And if you have a 32-bit kernel and a 64-bit userland, or the other way around, and you just say the data you need for this message is at this address, then it's going to get the address wrong and everything will die. So it is a challenge. Apple got around that. Well, presumably by not actually having a microkernel, because they're based on Mark 2.5, so everything was just over the system call interface. and B, by like shipping literally a like 32-bit and a 64-bit version of everything except the kernel. Well, actually including the kernel, but you obviously only get to boot one kernel.
Mm-hmm. I've been in the evenings. I've been reading a lot about the AROS kernel, and which is the free implementation of the Amiga kernel, and how to do things in there. Like, I have this fantasy that I want to try and implement a file system driver.
Okay.
On AROS, and that the microkernel. I've only ever done kernel level programming in a very small way, and only ever on Linux. But every time I look at code that people have written for a driver in Herd, or even a driver in AROS, it makes more sense to my brain, because of the because I was indoctrinated into OO in the proper way and learned about messaging. And so it's really nice to look at those kinds of architectures and how they live. I also look at Minix every time there's a new release of Minix or a talk about Minix, and the things that they do with it are absolutely amazing. And I guess they run. I guess every Intel processor also ships with Minix on it. So.
Now, did they update to like the NetBSD userland with Minix 3?
I don't remember which userland they ended up with on Minix 3. I thought that they had implemented their own, but I don't remember if they ported one.
Okay, I thought that like Minix 3 they sort of given up on the. This is purely a teaching operating system. Like you can, write from scratch given a textbook. To this is a real operating system that you can understand from scratch given a textbook, and that they have sucked
that's my understanding.
Third party in.
Yeah, I don't know about the third party stuff. Now I'm looking at it.
This is quite a long process, and we're now getting Clang, LLVM, and GCC, and we had the GCC Ada compiler at some point in the past as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
All right. That'll be important for our Ada stream.
It's not even worth joking about that.
This is the most fun I have in front of a computer, so I don't mind it at all. Oh, we're done.
We're done.
Just as we're done.
We're done on this step.
Yes.
We now get to do this step.
Oh, this is the easy one.
Right.
So just start an administrative shell in Windows. There we go. Oh, cool. The screen goes black when it asks if you want to give it...
Did it not go out over the stream?
On my version of the stream, it went black, and on TeamViewer, I could see it. That's weird. Maybe that was just an internet flake. And here's where you want your command key.
Yeah, because I don't know how to paste in...
Shift insert, I think. Or control insert. Maybe.
I've tried both of those.
Nope. Oh, well. Did it copy appropriately?
It claims to have done.
It says it.
Well,
it has.
Yeah, it has.
Okay. You can right-click to paste, I think, too. Oh, there we go.
I didn't press anything at that point.
Oh. But that is the command.
Nice.
All right. Oh, good. We're not using a proxy, so it'll go faster. There we go. And then close all your shells. Oh, well, close that one. I don't know if you have to close the...
Do I need to be running... do I need to run the shell as administrator to install?
Yes.
Stuff for chocolate. Right. Okay.
Well, it might take... It might ask. Oh, it didn't go black. Okay. That was just a glitch in my feed, I guess. All right.
Right, but now I can do...
now you can do these. But so Choco install Ninja and Choco install LLVM.
Can I do that on one line?
Presumably? I think so, yes.
Yeah.
There we go. By installing, you accept the licenses for the packages. Excellent. And yes, you want just hit A for all. You definitely want to run all the scripts.
Yep.
Chocolatey is a really well done package manager.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
I have had my obviously Chocolatey and all of the things on the Mac work around the fact that there isn't good package management in the operating system. Well, sorry, two facts. That one, and the fact that the operating system vendor don't care about the software that you're trying to install through the package. For various definitions, either they don't ship it at all or they don't ship the version that you want. I have been I have gone through Think and whatever it was first called Mac ports, then Darwin ports, and Homebrew, and have kind of come back round to the idea that actually the Debian way of doing it, where you say, no, actually it is the OS vendor's job, or I'm just going to find a different OS vendor, is the appropriate one to take.
Yeah, I grew up with that opinion and shared it widely for a while, and I'm starting to come around to the... Well, I'm not coming around to the other way. I'm learning that the rest of the world disagrees so strongly. So Debian, basically, for those of you that don't know, Debian feels that every package that gets added to Debian is ported to work on Debian, to follow Debian's conventions and rules, and then it's the package maintainer's job to make sure that that package always follows the rules. This causes problems because Debian Debian stable releases come about once every 2 years, and so your software at any given time is 2 years plus the beta plus the freeze period behind the latest and greatest, or up to 2 years plus the freeze time, which can be 3.5 years in some cases. And Debian's policy on backporting fixes is that they will only backport security fixes.
Okay.
And I started thinking about this because in the Ruby community had their own opinions about how their software should be installed. And people in the Ruby community started expressing that you should never run Ruby on Debian because you're getting all old software, and Debian is making modifications that the upstream author didn't intend to make it to make it behave the way Debian wants. And I always came down on Debian's side in that. And then somebody I respect a lot, Jamie Zawinski, complained that Debian ships such an old version of X Screensaver, which is security software because it's a screen locker.
Yeah.
That they're actually causing problems for him from a support perspective because the users of the software on Debian will run into a bug that he's fixed, and Debian won't backport the bug fix. They will only backport the security fix. And so I think Debian's somewhere along the way, I think Debian probably you want to hit all A for all. Somewhere along the way, Debian kind of needs to modernize their thing, and I think that the solution to this is basically run everything in a sandbox, which is what Fedora Silverblue does, and what GeeksSD and other things are doing, and NixOS. And I think that it feels dirty to me because that's just a workaround for upstream authors being lazy and shitty, but it's also but it's also kind of the way the world works, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's an elegant solution to a problem that I think shouldn't exist. um, and so I'm coming around to those kinds of things. My best experience that I've ever had on a Linux desktop was running Fedora Silverblue, where everything I ran was in its own sandboxed container. Every terminal I started was like it ran on a different machine, and it was lovely. And in GeeksSD, it's the same thing. Everything is sandboxed, although they have different mechanisms for how they achieve this. It's a really nice way. It's a nice way to work around that problem.
Right.
I always had the opinion, and I thought that when Jordan Hubbard got hired by Apple, that would cause Apple to basically just bake Darwin ports into the OS. Because back then I was younger and more naive and thought that Apple cared about me. But
So there was like the Open Darwin project, which had whether or not it ever had Apple sponsorship. I'm pretty sure it did. I think Apple donated some build systems and
I think
and
it
actually
did.
hosted the website for a time as well. But it definitely also had like Apple employees on the project team, and it had like a number of things that limited it, because I think that I honestly think that what happened at Apple was that they around the time of macOS 10 they thought that they could build an open source ecosystem to rival Linux, tried a bit, failed, and then just like slammed the door and went in the opposite direction. Because there's a famous story in is it Just for Fun, Linus Torvalds like sort of ghostwritten autobiography.
Where they tried to hire Linus.
Where Steve Jobs kind of brought him into a meeting and said, Linux is a toy. You can work on Darwin instead. It's the future. You should basically abandon Linux and work on this. And evidently that didn't happen. But
right.
Also, like, so the things that hobbled Open Darwin, which I think are just like testament to what was going on with Apple and open source back at the time, was that like they released these packages, but presumably for licensing reasons, A, couldn't release all of macOS 10, B, didn't want to release all of macOS 10, and C, didn't even want to release all of Darwin. So you needed a lot of like binary kernel extensions and plugins and like just executables from a Mac to get this thing to work. And there were like a couple of binary releases of Open Darwin, but they were actually like Mac OS 10 without the Windows server.
Right.
So you couldn't like build and run this thing yourself, and the build system was very convoluted, and it took a while for someone in Apple to just like re-implement their build system in open source so that you could so you could even rebuild the components that they were giving you. They didn't have much of a community, and indeed like bits of the community were fairly hostile. And it was they also had like a non-open source license, so the first version of the Apple public,
the APSL,
yeah. Right.
Okay, so we are done with that.
Nice.
So the next one we want is type where link to make sure it's getting the correct link. Okay. Maybe close the shell and reopen it.
Yeah. There is a there is a danger that actually I'd probably just run this as a username. That we are going to get to the end of this stream having only built the prerequisites and not actually done any GNUstep.
Well, I mean, that is if we manage to successfully build the prerequisites and start installing Gnustep, that is useful content for people that want to do the same thing.
Yes. Yeah.
But I am concerned that we are. We have to run that. Sorry, the line above that call line right here.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Which I tried to highlight. I'm not sure if it showed up. So we need to run that, and then we can check the linker. But
right.
for some reason, look at that! I can do it. I'm doing it.
Sorry, I'm gonna let go of the mouse. You do your thing.
Okay, there we go. Copy.
Nice. We don't have Arch, which is
cannot find the path
X64.
specified. Right, but it should be. I just want to make sure that it actually installed what I expected it to install. So let's go to this PCC. Program files x86.
It's in Microsoft Visual Studio, yeah.
Oh, there it is.
2017, yeah.
2017, Enterprise. We
No,
do not have VC. Okay, so that was possibly not the right... I guess that was not the right package. Huh. Okay, so what we're going to do is VC auxiliary build. That was... Visual Studio 2017 build tools.
Ah, nice.
Wrong package.
No, wrong shell.
Nope. Yep, we want to do that in a administrator shell. So CMD run as administrator. Yes. Okay, and then we want to Choco install Visual Studio 2017
Ah, you've missed the
build.
O from Choco.
Oh, oops. There we go. Okay, we didn't need Visual Studio 2017 Enterprise, I think.
Okay,
we needed build tools. That's better.
Vaguely happy to keep that. So this is the install the command line tools from Xcode analog.
Yeah. Yeah. The other one was install Xcode.
And then find out that it prompts you to install the extra tools when you launch anyway.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that what I was saying about sort of Apple going open source and then it not working and then Apple just going, well, screw that, is a thing that they have done. So you need to replace $arch with x64.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, you were saying about the open source with Apple.
Yeah, they did that with Java back in the start times of Cocoa. Because like the first few versions of Cocoa, including like the Rhapsody developer editions, all had Java support and Java bindings for all the Objective-C APIs. And I think that the only reason they gave up on that was that like there weren't enough people using it to be worth their while. I am worried that their current privacy focus is an example of the same. That they tried IAD, and they tried telling you with every keynote how many people's profiles they had on iTunes and how many credit cards they had, and that they were in the data gathering thing and they just weren't very good at it. And so we are currently in the well, screw you guys, I'm going home phase of Apple data gathering, and at some point it will become a competitive advantage again and they'll start again.
Yeah, that one, that is I view everything Apple does with sort of that. Oh, whoops, that was not what I wanted. Oh well. Well, let's see if it gives even something close to what I'm looking for. Neither one of those packages had that file in it.
No.
Um,
That doesn't look good.
okay, well, that's fine. I can do it over here though, and then everyone can see. VC auxiliary. I'm trying to find the. Let's go back here to the packages. I want chocolatey.org/packages. Okay. So I thought that getting all of Visual Studio 2017 Enterprise would give us all of that stuff. Let's see here. This sucks because, I mean, Chocolatey's a good package manager, but we need to know what we're looking for, I guess. Is it possible that maybe we have to run Visual Studio and install the command line tools through the SDK manager? Not now. Yeah, sure. And
this might be the thing that does the thing.
It might preparing for first use. Yeah, that might be the thing. So let's.
I like that. Build your first app in 5 minutes. We've been going an hour and 36 minutes. We've only just managed to launch Visual Studio. I accept that we weren't trying for most of that time.
So let's see if I can do where link. Oh,
yeah,
was it in the
might
other...
be in the wrong command prompt.
Maybe this one. Oh, there it is. Yep, there we go. No, it is not there. What the fuck? Okay, now I'm confused.
Well, let's try searching for. And I'm just going to search the internet.
Oh no, build tools. We've already We've already installed build tools, and then there are. And then there's Microsoft build tools. Let's try that one.
Okay.
Oh, you're scroll. I'm just gonna, because that one can be installing while we're looking up other answers. That's over here, Microsoft build tools. I'm not really worrying about fucking up your system too much because you can, because it's chocolatey, you can uninstall everything nicely.
Do you need to like relaunch the command line prompt after? You shouldn't do, because you're given an absolute path.
I don't think so, but I'm gonna try it anyway.
Oh, there
was a developer command line
exactly
prompt, yeah.
That thing. However.
So this is also not. So what it's okay. So what the directory is telling me is that it's missing. It's looking for VC, which is the Visual C++ compiler. So if we look for
Microsoft Visual C++ build tools.
Yeah, now that's 2015, but let's see here. Which one is the... Let's get a new administrator one. Okay.
I think the one with the colored text is an admin one, because that's one where you've been running Chocolatey so far.
Okay, well, we're gonna do it here.
You can actually just copy that command with that button there.
Yes, I can. Copy.
I don't know why I'm pointing to the screen. You probably can't even see my hand when I do that. No, you can't.
I can't because I'm looking in a different place. But right-click pastes. I just noticed. So let's do that. All right.
I'm just going to confirm a suspicion I have. No, there are still users in the chat.
Well, some of this must be entertaining, I suppose.
Yeah, or like we're 13 months into a pandemic and there's literally nothing else to do.
Or that. But we can lean into that. We're 0 months into a pandemic in Sweden.
We are now like 13 months into people saying, why don't we do what Sweden did?
Those people don't know what Sweden did or the effects of it, actually. What Sweden did was let the virus run wild.
Yeah.
And so the thing, when you let the virus run wild and you do nothing, you also don't have to provide monetary support to the people that are
dead.
That are dead, but also the people who lose their jobs because their job is heavily export based or things like that. And so what ended up happening is that the Arbetsförmedlingen, the Swedish unemployment agency, is still, there are people that are unemployed because of the Rona, and the Arbetsförmedlingen is still riding their ass to get a new job. And there are no jobs. Nobody's hiring right now. Yeah. Except for in software land, but the software people didn't lose their jobs anyways.
No. We've had that. We have had a response.
Matthew says in chat they're opting for that in Texas now because they enjoyed the weather disaster so much they wanted another one.
Yeah, I know that we're laughing at people dying, and that's quite grim. But I find it hard to internalize the idea that last year California burnt down, and this year Texas froze solid, and Americans still don't accept that climate change is a thing. It's like your climate has changed across America. All of your climate, it is changed.
When I was seeing the responses on Twitter to the Texas governor releasing all the restrictions, people said, "Oh, this is terrible. This is going to make things worse." And all of the it's weird because a bunch of the responses are, but now we have a choice, and the choice is important. And it's so weird that you can focus on individual liberty to such a strong... You can dig in on individual
live free
liberty
or die
so
trying
much.
is literally the phrase.
Right. But what they don't say, but what they're saying without realizing it, is live free and everyone else can die because of it. And that's a thing I don't understand. Sweden definitely has some of that, although that's not why we didn't do... I mean, the main reason why Sweden didn't lock down is because the Swedish government does not have the legal authority to tell people they can't go out.
Right.
That it's a quirk of Swedish law that we are not allowed... the government can't impose a lockdown.
So we had... very early in the not early enough obviously, but very early in the response, we have these things which are rather beautifully called Henry VIII powers, which is basically where the government votes to give ministers control of everything, and then there's no need to ever have another vote on it again because you've given control to to the ministers.
It's not to do with killing your wife.
So this is the one thing that Henry VIII did that isn't. He did a lot of autocratic like take back control, sort of things. Um, and actually, like literally every monarch from William the First to, in fact, like now to Elizabeth II, like, at least theoretically has these powers. So I don't know why you pick on Henry VIII. But like, so what they said was, we want the power to like tell the police that they're allowed to like arrest people for whatever they want. Basically, they basically went, we're going full police state on this thing, and we want that with the right to do that for 2 years. And at the time, everyone was thinking like, this is this is going to be a year of pandemic, and they eventually got beaten down to we will review it every 6 months. But it is amazing that like the Libertarian Party and all of the press coverage in the UK is all of the opposition to the lockdown policies that is being covered in the TV and in the news media is about the right wing of the government party saying, we think that you are infringing on our liberties, not the opposition party saying you are doing really badly and people are dying. And it is crazy that like the party of individual liberties is also the party of like, what is the quickest way to implement a police state?
Right. That's a thing that we found, when we're watching the US bullshit as well, right? It's the best Twitter accounts these days are the accidentally left-wing ones and things like that.
Yeah.
Where people are where the people are writing things like, we can't do this because that's communism. And I saw a really great one this last week, actually, which was this is what you get. It was a picture of two cities. One was like a beautiful city with lights on and stuff on a coast, and the other one was a picture of clearly a ghetto. And it said, "This is what the left is what you get on under capitalism, and the right is what you get under communism." And the first comment was, "The left picture is Cuba, the right picture is Detroit."
Nice. So I don't know if you're keeping an eye on chat, but Moth01 says that you'd asked
I just saw that
stream about QuakeEd, and DoomEd has been ported to Mac and GNUstep.
That is awesome.
I've definitely played Doom on a Next, and it's not much fun. It's one of those things that is theoretically possible, and of course, it is famous that a lot of the tools were developed on the Next, but it's actually not that usable.
It was the wrong hardware for it.
I had a turbo station, so I had the fastest Next that was available.
I spent so many hours of my childhood in DoomEd. And WADED and all of that stuff. I hacked the shit out of Doom, and then later Quake. Quake was awesome because you got Quake C, and you could build entire games in it.
Right. Now we use Lua for that kind of thing.
Yeah, Lua is awesome.
And now you get games, like AAA games that are released because someone did a mod of some other AAA game.
Oh, well, so that's where Team Fortress... So one of the games that I play often... My son plays it very often, and I play it sometimes with him, is Team Fortress 2, which is a team-based shoot-'em-up, and it's really great. Team Fortress started out as a Quake 1 mod called Team Fortress, QTF. And then they made their own engine and released the game separately. And then TF2 is a very popular game that's been it's been going on for years. It's funny. I used to, back when I got into sort of teaching and consulting about maintainability and testability and maintenance and longevity of software, I used to sort of talk shit about the games industry because the video games industry was very popular in the places where I lived. I'm not sure if you know this, but in Canada, maybe it's the same thing in the US or in the UK. But in Canada, if you live in like a small town with not much money and stuff, and you build a video game and then you get sold to usually to EA, the local government will pour just ungodly amounts of money and resources into trying to strike gold twice.
So it's funny that like you've mentioned all of the words that are relevant to my local situation. So I live in a town called Warwick, which is for people who aren't familiar with UK geography, it's like a wee bit south of Birmingham, sort of near Stratford-on-Avon. Like Shakespeare's town, and very close to a town that I used to live in called Leamington Spa. Like the two are almost a conurbation and meet in the middle. And the Darling brothers, who are the two sort of teenage programmers who created Codemasters and the Dizzy games, and this long-running company, are. It does now say you have to restart your shell, so it is possible you have to. But you should be able to call that that executable by absolute path.
Yep. Anyway, I'll keep doing that. Keep talking.
Yeah. So So Leamington Spa is where the Darling brothers founded Codemasters, and so the UK games industry is based in what they call Silicon Spa now, because like you have to do that to get nonsense VC money. And there's everyone here. Codemasters still here. Blizzard had a studio here that's no longer here. There's a bunch of like studios who just do things like the Sega Rally series and like very hyper localized things. There was a company called Ultimate Play the Game, which is now called Rare. And they are owned by Microsoft, but their studio is local. And it's basically like every time someone sort of desk flips out of Codemasters, they go like 3 buildings down, rent another office, and try again. Roll the dice another time. So
you're describing exactly what happens on Prince Edward Island, the little province that I moved from in Canada.
So, like, that is basically my area of the UK, and Codemasters just sold out to EA like last week.
Yeah, I saw that because of the Amiga community, and so we are rapidly running out of time, and I'm not sure we're going to solve.
We're
this.
rapidly running out
this
of
is going.
Packages from company.
Yeah, you're right. So I started by saying that I used to like sort of shit on the gaming community because in the video games industry that I came up in, or that existed when I was coming up, games programmers were the worst. They would hack things together, get it until it looked like it mostly worked, stamp it to a CD, and then never touch that code again.
Right.
And it wasn't until id Software came along and did really Quake, which was the first one where they didn't just throw it away after the first release. And nowadays, with MMOs and so on, there are code bases behind video games that are older than any app that I run on my phone or on my Mac. I don't think I run a single piece of software on my Mac, aside from file merge and obscure utilities like that are older than Team Fortress 2 or World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I think
and there's no reason why they can't be.
With the AAAs, there's now like, the people doing the engines and the people doing the games are different. And the games are like largely written in sort of Lua or in some sort of scripting.
Yeah, a lot of them use Unity
mobile, like
these
Unity,
days.
Exactly.
Yeah. I got recruited by really aggressively by Unity. Unity is, or at least part of it is based in Copenhagen, which is just across the bridge from here, and apparently they have an acceptance test suite that they built on top of Ruby and RSpec, and all of their Ruby people quit to go to the game shop down the road. And so they aggressively recruited me and said, we will give you 50% time to work on RSpec, and 50% time to work on our stuff, and we're going to pay you this ridiculous salary, and your title will be Director of Quality Assurance or something like that. And I would have taken it, except that my work permit didn't allow me to live in Sweden and work in Copenhagen, and my kids said, no fucking way am I learning Danish.
Nice.
And they really aggressively recruited me for about 2 years. And it probably would have been a pretty neat thing, except that my response to them was, we'll give you 50% time to work on RSpec. And I said, that's 20 hours a week more than I've ever worked on RSpec.
Yeah.
Because I haven't worked on it since, Christ, I think I have one patch in RSpec in the last decade. And it's been rewritten since I last touched it. So there's very little of me left in RSpec. I have more code in the Ruby standard library today than I have in RSpec. And but it was really nice to hear that the games industry is coming around to, we want to focus on maintainability and quality and longevity, because I that is something that I never would have seen coming when I was, hanging out in programmer circles and running up against games programmers in throughout the early 2000s and so on. Yeah. So this is my last crack at it. This is the last thing that matches anything even remotely. I mean, after this, I have no thoughts. So I think we might give up.
So something I wanted to bring up anyway before the stream ends is that we are not going to stream next week, which gives me 2 weeks to A, buy a computer, and B, set up the Streams Forever Home on it.
Right.
That Forever Home is looking unlikely to be Windows 10, to be honest. Like we've had 2 people who are motivated going at this for an hour and a half, following the instructions. Admittedly, the instructions are out of date and I can't update them. But like, we haven't even got the Objective-C runtime yet.
Yep.
This is this is not an enjoyable demo of how easy it is to get set up on Windows.
No, and it did not give us what we need. So, so I think that in what is clear to me about this stream being different from the other one is that we actually have to do some homework on this stream. On the Amiga stream, I rock up 10 minutes before we start, inflict all of whatever my configuration bullshit is on Graham, and then we stumble into a stream. Lose a cable. I didn't search for a cable today. Actually, I did search for a cable. I just found them all before I messaged you. And because I did actually have to find a USB-C cable today. And so, so this stream requires a little bit more preparation, I think, than the other one, which is fine. But that's also expected because there are computers that run and emulators and an active ecosystem of emulators that already run all of the software we need for the Amiga. But for GNUstep, that system, I think, is probably FreeBSD or Debian Unstable. And those are the 2 options we really haven't done yet. So
although Ricardo saying that he'd got the Windows 64-bit build working and giving me a link to the script made me think it was at least plausible. Now, admittedly, we went down the difficult Clang route rather than the less difficult GCC route, because we could have just used Pac-Man and got everything working on in MSys.
Oh, right. That was my fault too.
What you said was that Chocolatey was easy, and I think Chocolatey was easy. It was knowing what package you need. Let's give up on the computer. So, and I'm going to do this transition that brings me back to talking to you over here on the stream.
Oh, computer. That was a beautiful transition.
Yeah. Disappointing, but I mean, it's an informative signal anyway, right? Like, if you are thinking, I want to use GNUstep to get my Mac stuff off of my Cocoa stuff off of Mac, probably you don't want to start with Windows. Probably you want to start with a Unix-like system. It's going to be easier because, like, you know, any of the Unix APIs that you're using are already going to work and are going to work in a somewhat expected fashion. And you know, it definitely is possible on Windows, but you know, maybe there's just like a few too many sharp edges at the moment. I don't I don't feel bad about that stream.
Mm-hmm. No, I think we it was a shot and a miss, and we will come back in 2 weeks and have a working setup from the get go, and that will also give me time to do my homework, which I didn't do, which is to port anti-RSI to using NS running applications, so that we can avoid the application services stuff that definitely does not and will not work on GNUstep.
Ah, nice. Okay, so yeah, so hopefully 2 weeks time, some kind of target systems, probably some kind of Unix, anti-RSI requiring only Cocoa, if not bits of Cocoa that exist on GNUstep yet, and we can carry on with our mission. Good. Well, thanks everyone for joining us in the chat, and for the people who are watching on the stream. Really good to have you along and to have you joining in with us. Like we said, no stream next week. We will see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you, and see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, goodbye everyone.